Let's go ahead and get started on making this super quick and easy, lightweight, almost open knit type of sweater. Now, the materials that I'll be using to create the sweater are a number 4 worsted weight yarn. Along with that, I will be using a 6.0 mil hook. And because all of my patterns are always made to measure, I will be using a simple little tape measure like this, just to take my own body measurements and apply them to this tutorial. But again, if you guys are a larger size than me or a smaller size than me, you can totally manipulate this pattern to make it to whatever size you guys need. Now, just to give you guys a little bit more information, I will be using this Hobie Divina yarn. This is 65% baby alpaca, 25% polyamide, and 10% merino wool. And if you guys were interested at all, I will be using shade colorway number 3, number 4, and shade number 28 to make this really cute and easy, kind of a color blocked sweater. So let's just go ahead and get started on making the first panel. So to start making this sweater, what I'm going to do is start with a front panel and a back panel, and then ultimately I will add on the sleeves towards the very end. For my front panel, I want to start off with my measuring tape lying across my table. In total, I would like the circumference of the base of my sweater to reach about 40 inches around, because I want this to be very oversized and baggy. So I want my front panel starting chain to reach to about 20 inches long. So what I'm going to do here with my yarn, I'm just going to go ahead, start off with a basic slip knot, and always insert your hook. And as I mentioned, I do want this base chain to reach to about 20 inches long. This is just with the chain lying flat. There's no stretch to it. So what I'm going to do is just yarn over and pull through and yarn over and pull through. And we're essentially just making a super long chain. But let's just go ahead and continue here with our starting base chain. So I've just created a chain of 65, and as you can see, it does reach to my 20-inch marker. So that's going to be perfect for me. I'm going to stop here at 65 chains. But let's just go ahead and start here for row 1. After my 65th chain, I will be using an extended single crochet. So because this has a little bit of height, I'm always going to chain 2 at the start of my row. So before I start here for row 1, I will chain an extra 2. And that is just for turning. So now to start here for row 1, like I said, I will be using an extended single crochet. What I'm going to do is skip the first 2 chains in my row and insert my hook into the 3rd chain. So very similar to a single crochet, I'm just going to insert, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And with 2 on, I'm going to yarn over and pull through only 1. So I'm just going to bring that right through. And now again with 2 on, I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 2. So that is my first extended single crochet in the row. Again, looking here for my very next stitch, I'm going to insert, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And with 2 on, yarn over, pull through 1. And again, yarn over and pull through 2. So we're kind of stacking 2 single crochets on top of each other. But again, let's just work a few more together. I'm going to insert, yarn over, pull up a loop. With 2 on, yarn over, pull through 1. And with 2 on, yarn over and pull through 2. And again, looking here for my next chain, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, and yarn over and pull through 2. So it does look somewhat similar to a double crochet, but as we start to work up a few more rows, you will see that it has a really interesting design technique. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue on with my extended single crochet for the entire row. I've just reached the end of row 1, and this is what my piece is looking like. So from here I can start working on row 2. Again, I'm going to chain 2 at the very start of my row and turn my work. And always keep in mind that that chain 2 never counts as a stitch. It's just helping us build a little bit of height. So looking here at the very first stitch in the row, I'm going to insert my hook through both 2 top loops. And again, I'm going to yarn over, pull up a loop. And with 2 on, yarn over, pull through 1, and yarn over and pull through 2. So that is the very first stitch in the row. Always work right into that. And again, I'm just going to be mimicking these extended single crochets for every single stitch on the entire row. So there's really no surprises here. Of course, once I get up towards the neckline, we will add a few decreases, but for the most part, this is what our piece is looking like. And I'm just going to continue on here with these extended single crochets. Here at the very end of my 22nd row, I do want to change out my colors into my secondary color, but I just want to take a moment and take a quick little measurement. Again, with 22 rows of these extended single crochets, I have about 9.5 inches in length, which is perfect for me because I would like this sweater to reach to about 30 inches long or so. So if each block section is about 9.5 inches, I will ultimately reach about 30 inches long. So again, here at the very end of my 22nd row, I'm gonna go ahead and change out my colors. So I'm just gonna grab my secondary shade with this darker gray. Here at the very last stitch in my 22nd row, I'm gonna go ahead and work the very beginning of my extended single crochet. So I'm gonna pull through that one loop. And now that I have 2 remaining on my hook, I'm just gonna go ahead and bring in my secondary color and pull that through so that I can start working my 23rd row with my new shade. So I'm just gonna go ahead, take a moment, tie off a cute little knot right here, and begin working the next 22 rows with my new shade. So now that I have my new shade successfully attached, again, I'm just gonna continue on with the extended single crochet. So chain 2 at the beginning of your row, go ahead and turn your work. I'm gonna weave these in at the very end. And just like before, I'm just gonna carry on for the next 22 rows with this new shade. So again, I'm going into that very first stitch in the row, pulling through 1, yarn over and pulling through 2, and just continuing with this pattern of 1 extended single crochet across the entire row. So just to recap, I am repeating these same steps from the last 22 rows, just because I would like these little blocked sections to be equal in size. So again, I'm just gonna create another 22 rows following the exact same steps as before. I've just finished working up another 22 rows of these extended single crochets with my secondary shade. And here at the very last stitch in my 22nd row, or in total in my 44th row, I'm just gonna go ahead and change out my colors one last time to my 3rd blocked color. So again, I'm just gonna go into that stitch, work the first part, and once I have 2 remaining on my hook, go ahead and swap out your yarn and attach on your new shade. So here is the end of my total of my 44th row. I'm just gonna go ahead, tie off a little knot with my 2 tails and continue working with my 3rd shade. Now keep in mind, I don't wanna work another 22 rows in total with this next shade because I do want to add a little bit of a neckline. So I will have a few rows with some decreases just to shape the opening hole for our head to fit through. So I think I'm gonna aim for about 14 or 12 rows in total with my 3rd shade. And then I'm gonna hop back on camera to show you guys how I work the decreased neckline. But in theory, I will have another 22 rows in total with my 3rd and last colorway. I just wanna stop about halfway or 2/3 of the way through the last 22 rows, just to make sure that I'm leaving enough of a gap for my head. Now that I have my 3rd color officially attached, again, just chain 2 and turn your work and continue using those extended single crochets. So I'm just following the same pattern that I have from before. Again, I'm gonna pick up that very first stitch in the row and work these extended single crochets. I've just worked up a total of 14 rows with this 3rd color, and this is what my piece is looking like. So at this point, after my 14th row, I do want to take a moment to stop and place some stitch markers because I do want to work a few rows of decreases just to shape the neckline. So as I mentioned earlier, because I do have an odd number of stitches, I have chosen to leave off an odd number of stitches here at the very center. And likewise, if you have an even number of stitches, then feel free to leave off an even number of stitches at the very center. But for my neckline, I have left off a total of 7 stitches untouched at the very center of my sweater, and I've gone ahead and placed my stitch markers to the left and the right of the 7 stitches. So what I'm going to do is work on one shoulder neck side of the panel, and then once this is done, I will shift over and work on the other side. But keep in mind, this is going to be the exact same pattern. It is symmetrical, so whatever steps I show you here, go ahead and apply them to the other shoulder. So what I'm going to do here for my 15th row is I do want to work 2 extended single crochet decreases at the very end of my row, and then the following row I'm only going to be working 1. So let's go ahead and start working on row 15 of the neckline. So again, this is going to be row 15 of my 3rd colorway. What I'm going to do is begin by placing 1 extended single crochet across my entire row, just like I've done with the rest of the panel. And I'm going to stop when I have 4 stitches remaining in my row, and the end of my row does count here at the stitch marker. So I'm just going to continue to work 1 stitch across my row until I have the 4 stitches remaining. I'm coming up here to the very end of my 15th row, and I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 stitches remaining. So what I'm going to do is work an extended single crochet decrease. We're essentially just going to be combining 2 stitches in one. So I'm going to go into that very first stitch and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1. And now that I have 2 remaining on my hook, I'm going to go ahead and pick up the next stitch. So I'm going to insert, yarn over, and pull up a loop. With 3 on, yarn over, pull through 1, and again with 3 on, yarn over and pull through all 3. So that is going to be my first extended single crochet decrease. I'm going to go ahead and work 1 more into the last 2 remaining stitches. So again, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, and yarn over and pull through 3. So just to recap, I do have 2 decrease stitches at the very end of my neckline right here. So let's go ahead and start working on row 16. Again, for row 16, I'm going to start off with only 1 decrease at the very start of my row, and then work the rest of the row like normal. To start row 16, again, pick up that very first stitch in the row, pull up a loop, and yarn over, pull through 1, and go ahead and pick up the next stitch. We're just working that extended single crochet decrease, and only 1 at the very start of this row. So just to recap again, the row prior I had 2 decreases, and now I only have 1. And now for the rest of row 16, I'm just going to work 1 stitch across till the very end of my row. For row 17, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same exact steps from row 15. So I'm going to work 1 stitch across my entire row until I have 4 stitches remaining. And again, work 2 decrease stitches at the very end of your row. Here at the end of my row again, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 stitches remaining. I'm going to work those 2 decrease stitches in a row just to help shape this neckline and give it a little bit more of a boat neck feel. So there's 1 decrease and 1 more time into the last 2 stitches. Pick them both up and finish out row 17. So as you guys can see, the neckline is slowly curving instead of having like a very steep hexagon or trapezoid shape, which is what I prefer. So let's go ahead and work on row 18, chain 2, and turn your work. And again, for row 18, I'll be following these same steps from row 16. I'm going to start off my row with 1 decrease stitch. So pick up those first 2 stitches and decrease. And now again, for the rest of the row, I'm just going to be working 1 stitch across. For row 19, I do still want to work 1 more row of decreases at the very end of my row, but I only want to work 1 decrease again here at the last 2 stitches. So for row 19, we're kind of mimicking row 18, where I'm going to start off with 1 extended single crochet into each stitch across my row, and then when I have 2 stitches remaining, I will go ahead and work that 1 decrease. Again, here at the end of row 19, I do have 2 stitches remaining, so I'm going to go ahead and work that decrease right now and pick up both of those 2 remaining stitches. So again, just a quick little recap. this is what the shape of the neckline is looking like. And as I mentioned earlier, I do want each block to be 22 rows long. So because this is row 19, I do still want to work another 3 rows just to build up the rest of the shoulder and have this panel section match the other colors. So for the next 3 rows, or essentially row 20 to 22, I'm just going to be working 1 stitch into the top of each stitch without any more decreases. So at this point, we're just going to be working straight up on our neckline, and again, no more decreases. So to go ahead and start row 20, I'm just going to be picking up the first stitch in the row and placing a regular extended single crochet, and just continue on with this for the rest of row 20, row 21, and row 22. I've just finished up working row 22 of my very last color, and as you guys can see, this is what the shape of the neckline is looking like. It's nice and rounded and boat neck. So what I'm going to do at this point is cut off my yarn, leave a super long tail so that we can use this to sew together the 2 panels later on. But to go ahead and start working on the other side of our shoulder, what I'm going to do is attach a new yarn to the very corner over here, of course, chain 2, and starting from row 15 and onwards, you're going to want to mimic the exact same steps that I've shown you over here to work this decrease neckline. So again, feel free to attach your yarn right here, follow these same exact steps until you reach row 22 like mine, and then we can go ahead and move on to crocheting the back panel. I've just finished working up the other side of my panel, and this is what the shape of my neckline is looking like at this point. So as I mentioned earlier, each block color section is a total of 22 rows, and this is what it's looking like in its full entirety. So now at this point that I have finished up the front panel, what you're going to want to do is make a second matching back panel. But keep in mind, for the back panel, of course, we aren't going to have a neckline like this. I'm just going to be working straight across the entire row for a total, again, of 22 rows. So I've gone ahead and made a matching back panel. And as I said earlier, I'm not going to have a little neckline decrease area. I'm simply working just 1 stitch across the entire row for a total of 22 rows for each block section. So at this point, now that I have a front panel and a back panel, it's time to stitch these and seam these together at the top shoulder section. So I've gone ahead and cut off my yarn and left a super long tail. And what I want to do at this point is grab my darning needle and simply whip stitch the 2 shoulder sections together along one edge, and likewise I'm going to go ahead and repeat those same exact steps of whip stitching along the other shoulder section. Now that I have my panels connected along the top shoulder seams, it's time to start seaming together the very side edges of my panel. So although I can't fit this entirely on camera, the complete length of my front and back panel does reach to about 28 inches long. So I do want to leave about 9 inches or so left untouched for my armhole sections. So using my little measuring tape here, I'm just going to lie it flat across my panel, measure out about 9 inches, so it's stopping about 1 inch short here on my first color block section. And what I want to do is use a little stitch marker to pierce through both of these panels at the 9-inch mark. And what I'm going to do is attach a new yarn at the very bottom corner edge of my sweater. And what I want to do is simply single crochet through both of these 2 panels up until this point right here with my stitch marker. And again, I'm just leaving this open about 9 inches for the sleeve section. And now that I've gone ahead and single crocheted the edging of the panels together, what I want to do, again, now that I've stopped here with about 9 inches for my sleeve section, is just begin by placing extended single crochets in the round. So again, I'm just picking up right here after my very last single crochet. And what I'm going to do is begin always by chaining 2, and then just start placing extended single crochets wherever I see fit. You want to do your best to space these out as best as possible, but just go ahead and start placing these in the round. And this is how we are going to begin working the sleeve. So I'm just going to go ahead here for row 1, and wherever I see fit or an open gap, I will start placing those extended single crochets. I've just made it all the way around row 1, and here again at the very bottom underarm section, I'm just going to slip stitch into that top of the chain 2 space from the very beginning of the row. So I'm always slip stitching into the top of my chain 2 at the very end of each row. And in case you guys are wondering, again, for my sweater size with an armhole of about 9 inches long, I have placed 24 stitches on one side of the sleeve and 24 on the other. So in total for row 1, I have placed a total of 48 stitches. Now for the most part, I will just be working back and forth each round, placing 1 stitch into the top of each stitch. But I figured that this would be a pretty large sleeve by the very end. And I don't want the edging of my sleeve by the cuffs to be this long. So what I'm gonna do about every other row, or maybe even every third row, is work 1 decrease at the very end of my row. So let's go ahead and chain 2 and start on row 2 of the sleeves. So again, I'm chaining 2, go ahead and turn your work around. And for row 2, I'm just going to continue the same pattern of placing 1 extended single crochet into the top of each stitch. So for rows 1 and 2, I'm just working 1 stitch across, and onto every third row, I will work 1 stitch decrease. So I'm just going to go back and forth here for every single row. And again, I really am just working 1 stitch into each stitch from the row before. So go ahead and finish up row 2. And for row 3, I will work the entire row like normal, working 1 decrease at the very end of my row. I'm coming up here to the very end of my third row of the sleeves. And as I said, I do want to work 1 decrease here at the very last 2 stitches. So just like before, I'm going to pick up both of those last 2 stitches and work an extended single crochet decrease, just 1. And then again, just go ahead and slip stitch into the top of the chain 2 from the start of the row. And I'm just going to repeat this pattern over and over and over for every 3 rows. So again, I'm just going to go ahead, turn my work and start the pattern over. But again, for the next 1 and 2 rows, I'm just going to be working 1 stitch across the entire row. And every third row, I will work 1 extended single crochet decrease into that very last 2 stitches. So just go ahead and work on your sleeve. This is going to take me some time. So I've just finished up working on one sleeve, and this is what it looks like. Again, I am adding 1 decrease at the end of every third row. And in total for my sleeves, I have worked a total of 48 rows. So just to give you guys some quick measurements, from the very edge of my sleeve to the very other edge of my sleeve, I have a total of 20.5 inches. So again, this 20.5 inches does get me to 48 rows in total. So now that you guys have seen how I work up one sleeve with this nice subtle tapering decrease, I've gone ahead and attached my yarn at the other corner and seamed up the other panel with those single crochets. And once I hit my stopping point just above my last block of color, I've gone ahead and worked another matching 48 rows for my second sleeve. So this is what my project is looking like at this point. I've finished up the main body, I have my sleeves attached, and all that's left at this point, and it's completely up to you, is I do want to go in and add a few rows just here at the collar for the neckline, just because it is a little bit wide. I don't mind this for myself, but I would like this to be a little bit tighter fitting on my boyfriend. So what I'm going to do is attach a new yarn to this upper right hand corner of my collar, and I'm just going to begin by placing single crochets in the round and turning my work at the end of every single row. So that's all that's left for this collar. Again, I'm really just working single crochets back and forth for as many rows as you would like, just to kind of tighten up this neckline. So again, now that I have my new yarn attached to my upper right hand corner, I'm just going to pull up a loop and chain 1. And for the remainder of this collar neckline, I'm just going to be placing single crochets wherever I see fit, just along this neckline edge. So again, I'm just picking up any old spot that I see fit and placing a single crochet. And here after my 54th stitch, again, the number count doesn't exactly matter. This is just for my own body size. I have 54 single crochet. I've made it back to the very start of my row. So I'm gonna pick up that chain one space that we created and slip stitch right into that. And just like before, I'm gonna go back and place one single crochet into the top of each stitch. And I'm gonna repeat this for as many rows as I see necessary, and I'll meet you back to show you my final collar. I've just finished working up a total of 7 rows with these single crochets, and as you can see, it does bring in the neckline just a little bit tighter, which is exactly what I wanted. So here after my 7th row, I'm just gonna go ahead and tie off a knot and just leave a super long tail. That way you guys can weave this in. But now at this point that I've finished up the collar, your entire sweater is completed, and all that's left for you guys to do is to go in by hand and weave in all of your ends. So make sure that you're weaving in this end, weave in the ends from your sleeves, and so on. But before I go, I know you guys are gonna ask for some measurements. With those 7 rows of single crochets on the neckline, I have a total of about 1 3/4 of an inch worked up right here for the collar.